We live in the digital age, so we know that protection of intellectual property is more important than ever. After all, we don't want our hard-fought algorithms disappearing into the clutches of some evil Eastern European gang now, do we? But where does all of this leave artists and designers? That's surely a much more difficult thing to protect, isn't it? Or is it? Adams & Adams' partner, Mariette du Plessis, is someone who's become expert in this area, and she's with us now. Mariette, welcome. I'd imagine that the first part of the problem is that most creatives don't even think about protecting their IP, do they?
You've hit it on the nail, Chris. This is exactly what the problem is. They're very much unaware of their rights. They don't realize that in some instances they have to register rights in order to enjoy protection. There's a misconception that you can obtain rights registered here worldwide, which is also not the case. So there's just a lack of knowledge, which I think is a big problem. There should almost be an IP course in every training college and university on design.
So how do you begin to help someone who has, for example, just produced a stunning new piece of fabric?
Well, firstly, there will be copyright in that design. Fortunately, copyright is the one form of IP that you don't have to register. So that's the plus. Most countries in the world belong to a convention which gives you reciprocal rights. There are a few exceptions, so they must also be aware of that. But then you have copyright in that design, but that will be in your original drawings. So if somebody copies that design, then you can take action on that basis. But you can also register it as a design separately. So you have to think about IP as a bundle of rights, and you'll have to see what you can do to protect those rights.
And presumably it's expensive.
Sometimes it can be expensive, especially if you have to register in other countries. But with a copyright, they can use the C symbol, they can use their name, and they can indicate the year in which they are launching the product. That alerts at least people that there are rights in that particular work.
Is South African law strong enough in this regard?
South African law, I think, is strong. The problem is, as you mentioned in the beginning, the digital era, and that is that people have access to all the designs that South African designers do here internationally, because it goes on Twitter, it goes on Facebook, it goes on websites, and that just creates the opportunity for copying abroad.
Now, China is a big problem in this regard. How do you deal with the Chinese?
With great difficulty. It is difficult. Because particularly of the fact that it's a geographical protection that you get, for example, for a design. So if you design a chair here and you protect it in South Africa and somebody copies it abroad and they sell it there, then you don't necessarily have protection. Now, there may be instances where you can rely on the copyright in your drawings, but if they've only reverse engineered your product, then you may have a problem. And that's why you have to think of the markets where potentially you could go, and rather incur the cost and pay it off if you have to, but think about it.
Now, how did you personally become involved in this very niche area of a niche part of the law?
Well, I've been involved in IP for many years, but we really regard the creativity as the core area of our business, but we've perhaps focused more on the larger corporations and not on the young creatives and the people starting out in this field. And I've just got a particular interest in design and art, and I really enjoy it. And we realized that there was a big gap in the market, that the guys coming out of the universities just don't have a clue about their rights. And it's not pleasant to pay school fees when you go through life. You rather want to spend your money on promoting your career rather than fighting the problems. And I think the big issue is contractually, is that they stumble across so many problems by just not knowing how to enter into a good contract, how to protect their rights, and then you lose money, and when you're a young artist or a young creative, it's a big loss.
But talking about money, young artists, starving young artists, surely Adams & Adams isn't making anything out of this?
We are not making too much money out of this, definitely not. But it is a way of paying back to the industry and to designers that we hope will be very successful in the future, and giving them a bit of a start in their career.
Mariette du Plessis, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.